Clint Eastwood is a Hollywood legend, a man who controlled every story he ever told on screen for over 70 years. But there is one story he never tells. It is the story of a woman who held a strange and powerful influence over him. A woman whose name is now a ghost in his long life. What did she do to him that no one else ever could? Why did he try so hard to erase her from history? Before the world knew him as a star, Clint Eastwood was a restless young man. He often spoke of growing up during hard times, but his family was actually well off, living in a nice part of California with a swimming pool and a country club membership. Young Clint was not a good student. He was more interested in fast cars and easy women. School records show he had poor grades, and was even asked to leave one high school for pulling pranks. It's like burning an effigy on the school lawn. He worked odd jobs, from being a lumberjack in Oregon to a lifeguard in the Army. Before deciding to try his luck in Hollywood, Hollywood did not welcome him with open arms. His start was slow and difficult. Directors thought his acting was amateurish, saying he was stiff, awkward, and delivered his lines through his teeth. He failed one audition after another. His first contract with Universal Studios was a small one, and after a few minor roles in B-movies, the studio let him go. For years he struggled, digging swimming pools to make money, and wondering if he should give up on acting altogether. This long, hard road to success built in him a powerful work ethic and a deep need to control his own destiny. But that same need for control spilled into his personal life. In 1953, he married a young woman named Maggie Johnson, but Clint later admitted their first year of marriage was terrible. He once told a magazine that Maggie had to understand he would do as he pleased, and if she couldn't accept that, they wouldn't stay married. He saw himself as a vagabond, someone who couldn't be tied down by what he called female possessiveness. For Clint, this meant having affairs, many of them. He later admitted that cheating became addictive, like a habit he couldn't break. Even before he married Maggie, he had a secret affair that resulted in a daughter named Lori. The baby was given up for adoption, and Clint would not learn of her existence for many years. During his marriage, Clint Eastwood had a 14-year affair with a stunt woman named Roxanne Tunis, and they had a daughter named Kimber in 1964. Maggie Johnson seemed to accept this arrangement, living in what was often called an open marriage. Clint kept all his romantic partners at a distance, carefully maintaining his independence and ensuring that no one could ever truly possess him. But there was one woman in his life he treated differently, someone he gave his full devotion to, his mother, Ruth Wood. Their bond was exceptionally close. He often brought her as his date to the Academy Awards. In 1993, when he won the Oscar for Unforgiven, he stood before the world and called his mother the most important woman in his life. It wasn't just for show. Friends said Clint was genuinely devoted to her and frequently sought her advice. It was Ruth who first suggested casting Meryl Streep in The Bridges of Madison County. He remained close to her until she passed away at the age of 97. This revealed a pattern in Clint's life. There were two kinds of women for him. The mother figure, someone he adored and respected, who supported him without trying to control him, and romantic partners, women he kept at arm's length, wary they might try to possess him. For decades, he kept those two worlds separate. But eventually someone came along who didn't fit neatly into either category, someone who would append his ideas about love, control, and freedom. Her name was Sandra Locke. She was born in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and her childhood was difficult. She described her parents as distant and uninvolved. But Sandra was sharp, ambitious, and driven. She graduated as valedictorian of her high school class and had dreams far beyond the limits of her small town. In 1967, a nationwide talent search was held for a film called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Sandra auditioned and won the part. It was her first film role, and her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. From the beginning, Hollywood saw her as a serious talent, but Sandra's personal life was very different from most actresses. She had a secret she kept for many years. She was married to her childhood best friend, Gordon Anderson. Their marriage was unconventional. Gordon was gay, and their relationship was entirely platonic. He was her confidant, her emotional anchor, and her most trusted companion. Though their marriage wasn't romantic, he remained legally married for her entire life. Clint Eastwood first met Sandra in 1972 during a meeting at Universal Studios, but sparks didn't fly until 3 years later in 1975. Clint was directing and starring in The Outlaw Josie Wales, and he cast Sandra as his love interest. On the dusty film set in Arizona, their connection was immediate and intense. The chemistry that audiences would later see on screen was entirely real. Even though Clint was still married to Maggie, and Sandra was still married to Gordon, she and Clint began living together during the filming of the movie, in an odd way. Sandra's unique marriage to Gordon made her the ideal partner for Clint. She wasn't seeking a traditional husband, or family, or the conventional life Clint tried so hard to avoid. She already had emotional stability and support in her bond. With Gordon, this made her available for the kind of passionate but non-binding romance Clint wanted. It seemed like a perfect arrangement for a man determined never to be tied down. But the very thing that made their relationship possible would also plant the seeds of its eventual unraveling. Sandra's loyalty was divided. She had a deep emotional bond with another man, Gordon Anderson, that Clint Eastwood could never fully understand or break. For someone like Clint, who needed complete control in both his personal and professional life, this unshakable connection posed a quiet but persistent threat. At first, though, their relationship seemed like a dream. In her autobiography, Sandra wrote that Clint shared things with her he had never shared with anyone else. He told her he had never truly been in love before her. For a man known for countless affairs, this was a stunning confession. Even made up a song for her, repeating the line, "She made me monogamous." It was his way of saying she had done what no other woman could. She had tamed him. They became one of Hollywood's most talked-about couples. Over the span of just 7 years, they made 6 films together, including The Gauntlet, Every Which Way But Loose, and Sudden Impact, a dark entry in the Dirty Harry series. Sandra was the only actress besides Meryl Streep to ever receive star billing in one of Clint's films. Their lives were fully intertwined, dramatically, creatively, and professionally. But behind the curtain of red carpets and box office hits, things were shifting. Clint's need for control didn't stop at their relationship. It began shaping every aspect of Sandra's life. He pressured her to work only with him. Offers from other directors dried up. The industry no longer saw her as an independent, Oscar-nominated actress. She was now simply Clint Eastwood's girlfriend. Her once promising career was fading into a shadow, alleys, which grew darker and larger with each passing year. Then came a turning point. Clint made it clear he did not want more children. In the late 1970s, Sandra became pregnant twice. Each time she had an abortion at his urging. The second one left her especially heartbroken. She later wrote that she believed the child would have been extraordinary. After that, Clint asked her to take a permanent step. She agreed to undergo a tubal ligation, a surgery that would ensure she could never have children. It was the ultimate sacrifice, a one-way decision that changed her life forever. She gave up the chance to have a family not just for him, but for the future she believed they were building together. A future she thought they would share. This irreversible decision formed a deep, unspoken promise between them. But it was a promise Clint Eastwood would shatter in the most devastating way. While Sandra was investing everything into their life together, Clint was secretly starting a new one with someone else. In the early 1980s, he began a hidden affair with a flight attendant named Jocelyn Reeves. This was no brief affair, it was a long-term relationship he kept completely secret. While still living with Sandra, Clint fathered 2 children with Jocelyn. Their son Scott was born in 1986, followed by their daughter Catherine in 1988. Clint was now living a full double life, to homes, to families, 2 versions of reality. But perhaps the most chilling part of this deception was found in the official records. On both children's birth certificates, the space for the father's name was left blank. The documents read simply, "Father declined." This wasn't an oversight, it was a calculated legal move. One designed to protect the secret and keep the truth from everyone, especially Sandra. That decision said more than words ever could. It revealed a man who was willing to deny even his own children to maintain control over his public image and his private affairs. It was a stark example of how far he would go to manage the narrative of his life, if it meant erasing the people he had created. Meanwhile, Sandra had no idea. She continued to live, unaware that the foundation she had built her life on was already starting to crumble. Sandra continued to live with Clint, completely unaware that he had another family. She would only learn the shocking truth years later. After their relationship had already unraveled in the most painful way, an investigative journalist broke the news to her during the middle of her legal battle against him. The discovery shattered her. For at least the last 4 years of their time together, the man she loved had been lying to her every single day. While she was sacrificing her chance at motherhood for the relationship, he was secretly raising 2 children with another woman. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had ever imagined. Clint Eastwood, a man celebrated for his masterful storytelling on screen, had built the story of their real life together. On a carefully constructed lie, the end of their relationship came with the cold precision of one of his own film scenes. It was April 1989. Sandra was away, finally pursuing a dream that was hers alone. She was directing Impulse, her second feature film. After years in his shadow, she was proving her talent as a filmmaker, stepping into her own light. While she focused on her work, Clint acted decisively. He didn't call her, he didn't ask to talk, he didn't have a difficult conversation. Instead, he treated the end of their 14-year relationship like a business transaction. He hired a crew to go to their shared home in Bel Air, the house they had spent years renovating together. He instructed them to pack up all of Sandra's belongings. Every piece of clothing, every photograph, every reminder of her presence was boxed up and hauled away. Everything was placed into storage. Then he sent for a locksmith. Every lock on every door in the house was changed. When Sandra returned home, her key no longer worked. She couldn't get in. She had been locked out of the life she had built. It was an act of complete control. There was no confrontation, no closure. Clint didn't just end the relationship, he erased her from it physically and permanently. The cold, calculated nature of it was terrifying. It mirrored the way he directed films. Fast, efficient, and emotionless. No second takes, no drawn-out scenes, just a clear decision executed with finality. That same directorial ruthlessness was now aimed at a human heart. He didn't break up with her, he cut, wrapped, and walked away. Sandra was devastated. She was humiliated. But she wasn't defeated. She made a bold choice one few in Hollywood had ever dared. She sued Clint Eastwood. Her first lawsuit was for palimony, a legal claim seeking financial support from a long-term partner. Clint's legal team tried to reduce her to a footnote in his life, calling her little more than a roommate who had occasionally stayed in his home. The case dragged on. And during this period of legal warfare, Sandra was diagnosed with breast cancer. The emotional and physical toll was immense. In 1990, facing her illness and the exhaustion of the court battle, she agreed to a settlement. On paper, the deal appeared generous. Clint agreed to give her a significant sum of money and a house. But to Sandra, the most important part of the settlement wasn't the money or the property, it was a promise for her future. He agreed to get her a $1.5 million, 3-year directing deal at Warner Brothers. For Sandra, this wasn't just a financial settlement, it was a lifeline. It represented hope, a second chance at a career she had put on hold for over a decade. It meant the possibility of rebuilding her professional identity on her own terms. But that promise was built on deception. Over the next 3 years, Sandra threw herself into the opportunity. She developed more than 30 different film projects, pitching them with determination and creativity. Every single one was rejected. It didn't make sense. She began to suspect something was wrong. Eventually, she uncovered the devastating truth. The directing deal wasn't real. Clint Eastwood had secretly funded the $1.5 million himself. Warner Brothers hadn't backed her. They had simply taken the money in exchange for pretending they had. What she thought was a new beginning was actually a dead end. The deal had been designed not to help her, but to contain her. Clint hadn't given her an opportunity, he had built her a gilded cage. One that ensured her silence and her professional isolation. She hadn't just been silenced. She'd been effectively erased from the very industry she had once belonged to. In 1995, Sandra made a bold move. She sued Clint again, this time for fraud. It was a daring act, one that many believed would end whatever was left of her career. She wasn't just suing a Hollywood icon. She was taking on a major studio and the machinery of power that protected him. The case went to trial, and the details of the fake deal were laid bare in court. It was a story of manipulation, betrayal, and calculated control. The jury listened carefully. After the trial, the jury forewoman publicly stated that it was clear Sandra's career had been sabotaged, and that the secret payment amounted to fraud. Before a verdict could be reached, with a likely 10-2 vote in Sandra's favor, Clint Eastwood abruptly settled. Terms of the settlement were kept secret. Outside the courthouse, Sandra said she felt vindicated. She had faced down one of the most powerful men in the industry and exposed the truth. She had refused to be dismissed or silenced. But though she won the battle, she lost the war. In Hollywood, challenging someone like Clint Eastwood came with consequences. She believed she had been blacklisted. The phone stopped ringing. The connections she once had began to disappear. Friends and colleagues who had once championed her now kept their distance. No one wanted to risk angering a man with the power to shape careers. The erasure was quiet but thorough. In 1997, she released her memoir, The Good, the Bad, the Very Ugly. It was her version of the story told in her own words, but even that was stifled. High-profile media appearances were quietly cancelled. An interview on The Oprah Winfrey Show was scheduled, then pulled. That same year, a documentary titled Eastwood on Eastwood aired, celebrating Clint's long career. It included clips from the 6 films he made with Sandra, but the footage was edited so that her presence was barely visible. It was as if she had never been a part of them. Her career never fully recovered. She directed a few small projects, but she was no longer welcome in the world she had once helped to shape. Hollywood had turned its back. She lived her later years in the shadow of what might have been, marked by courage, loss, and a refusal to be silent even when the cost was everything. Quietly out of the public eye, Sandra Locke lived her final years with little fanfare. In November 2018, she died from cancer at the age of 74. Her death went unreported for 6 weeks. Clint Eastwood, the man with whom she had shared 14 years of her life, offered no public acknowledgement, no statement, no tribute, nothing. The following year, during the Academy Awards in Memoriam, Sigmona, moment dedicated to honoring those in the film industry who had passed her name, was absent. The erasure was complete. But then came a strange and haunting twist. The day after her death was finally announced to the public, a new Clint Eastwood film was released in theaters. It was titled The Mule. In it, Clint plays an aging man who has made many mistakes. The character seeks redemption and tries to make peace with his ex-wife, a woman he had hurt deeply, who is now dying of cancer. It was a story of regret, of missed chances, of an old man trying to say goodbye before it's too late. That story unfolded on screens across the country just as the real woman he had once loved, and later devastated, was being laid to rest. Today, Clint Eastwood stands as one of the last great figures of classic Hollywood. At 95, he remains a towering symbol of rugged American endurance, of cinematic control and personal myth-making. His legacy is a story he has directed, edited, and managed for decades. Every frame of his public image has been carefully lit, every narrative precisely staged. But there is one chapter of that story he could never fully control. One person he could never entirely command. Sandra Locke remains the ghost in the machine, invited, unresolved, and unforgettable. She was the only woman who ever made him believe in something like monogamy, one who dragged him into a courtroom and forced him to confront his betrayal. He could pack up her belongings, change the locks, and vanish from her life without a word. He could bankroll phony deals, silence interviews, and let her name be edited from his films. He could withhold a final goodbye even in death, but he could never erase the legal record, could never unpublish her memoir. He could never undo the truth of her story. In the end, the one thing she managed to do, the one thing no one else ever could, was to become the part of his life that he couldn't direct.